All right, tonight we got Loyd Auerbach. He's a parapsychologist, he's an author, he's a public speaker, educator, psychic, and entertainer. He's got a lot of books out, but one of his books that he has out is a paranormal case book, and I wanted to talk about that a little bit later. Also, too, I heard a rumor on the internet that you like chocolate. You're a
Yes, but not that chocolate.
You're a connoisseur of chocolate.
I am.
Can you
Yes.
please tell me what that's all about?
Yeah. So I actually have a certificate as a professional chocolatier that I got a number of years ago. Back in the early 2000s, I mean, here in the Bay Area, we're also in wine country, as you know. And one of the wineries in the late 90s started carrying Scharfenberger chocolate. Scharfenberger was in some respects, they were the very first American artisan chocolate makers in Berkeley here. And they started out by going to Trader Joe's and selling their stuff through wineries as well. I had never had really, really good dark chocolate until I had Scharfenberger stuff. So I got really interested because I'm a food and wine guy. And over time, between the late '90s and early 2000s, I started really reading up on chocolate, how it's made, where it's from, all that stuff, trying a lot of different things. We actually had a store in San Francisco called Fog City News, which no longer exists, unfortunately, right on Market Street that carried over 250 bars of chocolate. And over time, I got to be a member of their centenary club, which meant I had tried 100 different chocolate bars. And then actually, I got up to 200 at one point. Uh,
Wow.
During that time, I was talking to my publisher, the first publisher of a paranormal case book, in fact. I was visiting her in Dallas, um, and we had met at a ghost conference up in Seattle and started talking about chocolate up there for whatever. I don't even remember why we started talking about that, but I think because she had a friend who was a chocolate maker in Seattle. And she thought that we would go out to a store. When I was visiting her, I picked up a whole bunch of really good chocolate bars that I knew were good. I gave her a little kind of a chocolate tasting, like a wine tasting. And she said that I should write a book about how I became this chocolate guy. So originally, I was going to write a book. I actually interviewed a number of major chocolate makers in person and also, over the phone in a couple of instances, and got to know the process. And one of them, Joseph Schmidt, who was originally in San Francisco, he suggested that I take a course in how to make chocolate if I'm going to write this book. So I did. I got a certificate, started making chocolate. The problem with the book was that my publisher decided she was going to sell the business. And I hadn't gotten to the point where I finished the book or even gotten close to finishing it. I was still working on the interviews and such. And she and the new person who was owning who bought the place didn't not only didn't want to continue publishing a paranormal case book, they were going to focus on Texas only books, but didn't want to do a chocolate book. And I shopped it around a little bit, didn't go anywhere, so I put it aside. In the meantime, between 2005, 4 or 5, and today, I started doing guided chocolate tastings for people. So for
Wow.
businesses, I've done them at a lot of law firms. I've done them for events, for parties. I've even done them at a couple of ghost hunting events. In fact, I did just taking, talking, kind of getting out what I know about really good chocolate and introducing people to some of the best chocolate out there. I've also made and sold chocolate for a while, but after I'm holding off, I held off on that. I wasn't really able to go into full production. That's retirement. When I retire from my current position, the work that I do, I will probably, not parapsychology, but I'll probably open a chocolate shop.
Wow, that's pretty cool, Loyd.
Yeah. So people know to ask me, what's good chocolate? And I have favorites that kind of shift quite a bit and a favorite place to order from.
The best chocolate I ever had was when I went to Belgium.
Belgium makes, yeah, there's good chocolate makers in Belgium.
I
Absolutely. They tend to add a little more cocoa butter back into the chocolate than a lot of other places, which is why it seems so smooth. It's not quite as a taste. It's quite as dark as some other chocolates might with the same percentage of cocoa or cacao in it. But I personally, I mean, I've had some Belgian. I'm not a big fan of Godiva, but I am a fan of some. I've had some other Belgian chocolates that are also good. We have great chocolate makers in the United States. There's great ones in all sorts of places around the world. So
Oh yeah.
it's been a lot of fun, kind of tasting. And probably have right here in my office, my home office. I probably have 6 bars, different kinds of bars. So
But you don't go for this kind of chocolate, huh?
yeah, Hershey's doesn't have enough chocolate. Hershey bars do not have enough chocolate in the bar.
Oh, okay.
So if you really, I mean, the typical Hershey's milk chocolate has maybe 15% cocoa in it. The rest is milk and sugar. I'm sorry, that's not a chocolate bar. That's a candy bar.
Oh my God. Lloyd, how many books do you have out there?
I have technically 10 books, 9 of which are paranormal related. I've co-authored a couple of them. The 10th book is actually a book on self-publishing that I co-authored with a elderly mystery writer. He is now 99 years old and still working on things. And in fact, I highly recommend his mystery novels. His name is Richard L. Wren, W-R-E-N. They're all available on Amazon. Um, and I have 2 paranormal mystery novels that I've co-authored with Rich Hozek and Arnold Rudnick. They're somewhat based on my cases.
Can you tell me about the book, A Paranormal Casebook? That sounds really interesting because you you've written about all these different cases that you've
Yep.
been on for so many years.
Yeah. The book is actually a compilation of a number of my cases. It's certainly not all my. I mean, I've technically done hundreds of cases over the years. But they're unique cases. I found that, what's in that book are some of the more unique cases or the cases that have, I guess you'd say, more activity or more oomph to them. There's actually a couple cases in there that have normal explanations, although they're unusual normal explanations, because part of the reason I wanted to write that book was to teach people about the different types of phenomena, the ways we actually investigate them, the importance of witnesses, of really looking into the environment, and also the importance of looking for normal explanations, even obscure normal explanations, in all cases. That book has the longest write-up of the USS Hornet case that I started doing back in 1999. It's all the early stuff that people never knew about because myself through an Oakland Tribune reporter by the name of Angela Hill, we kind of broke the story that the Hornet was haunted. So that was kind of to promote that, help promote the ship. Also, a very, very lengthy piece on the Moss Beach Distillery investigation, which ran for that book. That part of it goes from 1991 through 2004 or 5, and then in a subsequent book, I added a little bit more to that process, to that story as well.
I also too did the Moss Beach distillery.
Mm-hmm.
And if you go on my Facebook timeline, I have a picture there of supposedly a ferry that was taken over there. Some of these investigators, I think it was like 4 of them, kept on saying, Paul, we're seeing ferries flying around. And I said, well, take a picture of it. I didn't see any ferries. And that's the picture that we got. I mean, it could be a bug, but I don't know. I mean, but I would like it if you look at it and tell me
I'll
what
take
you
a look
think
at
it
it.
is.
Take a look at
Okay,
it.
okay.
If there are fairies, they're not in my field, so they have nothing to do with us.
But continue on about the book.
Yeah. So there's also a write-up of the Banta Inn case, which is out in Tracy. That was a really physically active case, although kind of slowed down in the late 1990s. But that was a really interesting case that we had. And then I have a lot of residential cases that are in there. Some apparition, a haunting case. There's poltergeist cases in there. There are, like I said, a couple of cases that have normal explanations. The other thing I did was I updated a few things about the book when I put it out again last year. I changed the subtitle. The subtitle now is cases for a parapsychologist, first 25 or so years. But I'll be writing a second volume later this year because there are a bunch more. As I was redoing that book, I realized I got a lot more I could write about. There is a section at the very beginning of the book which is sort of an FAQ about the phenomena, about what are ghosts and such. I actually just put that up as the FAQ on my new website, which was launched last month, which is just simply loydauerbach.com. So that's there. And in the back of the book, I have a resources list, which is up to date through last year. So parapsychology resources people can find online, journals they might, or publications they might want to go to, the credible ones, the really credible ones. And also kind of a self-interview, because people always ask me, how'd you get into this? And a whole bunch of other questions. So that's all in there too, as well.
Well, that's pretty good. Um, and Zandine, it looks like you wanted
Lloyd,
to ask something.
Hi, Jandine.
hey, how you doing, huh, Lloyd? Man, it's so good to have you back because I hope you know since the last time you were on, every guest that we've had, if it comes up something about paranormal and they get to talking about ghost boxes or equipment, I'm like, So we had the expert on our show, and what he says about ghost boxes and X amount of, they're like, oh, everybody still wants to hold on to some of those things, and
Yeah.
and that's okay. But ever since I had you on, things haven't been the same, man. So what I like to do before the show is over, if I could get like your top 5 pieces of equipment that people, think they depend on, but you really found opposite research on them, and then your explanation of EMF again when you said that sometimes it's residuals of humans rather than the
Right.
dead person. If you see apparition, it's something else.
Yeah. I mean, I'm trying to think. There's the equipment that really is questionable for us in terms of what the results are.
Yeah,
Any of the spirit boxes or ghost boxes, as I think I talked about last time,
yeah,
the
yeah.
question is how they actually work. And if they are random systems, there's two issues. One, we interpret as human beings, the people talk about pareidolia all the time. Everybody knows that. You see a cloud and you get an idea what the shape is. We are hardwired to find patterns. That's just what human beings do. We're hardwired to name things, categorize them, label them, and we're hardwired to find patterns, whether it's pattern in a visual or an auditory thing. So when people listen, all too often when people, even with EVP, which is another problematic thing, although there's been
Yeah.
some good research in that area, we try to fit what we think we hear to the question we asked. And
Okay.
and I've seen some really, whether or not the spirit box came up with a voice from a spirit or an EVP was, it's like, how in the world could you possibly connect what you think you heard to what the question was? Because they have nothing to do with each other. So that's one piece that the other side of that is that we have lots of laboratory evidence that living people can consciously, somewhat, but really unconsciously affect random systems. So if it truly is a random system that is picking up different things, it could be us. And it's just as likely it's the living person who is causing that specific thing to come up on the ghost box than it is, you have to have some other indication there's a spirit present. And just because people think the place is haunted does not mean there are ghosts there. That's an important thing. Um, I think that one of the things that could be useful, but people have been taken in by the claims, is actually the REM pod. Because the REM
Okay.
pod actually has in its innards a fairly inexpensive theremin kit. And a theremin is a musical instrument that you play. In fact, if you look it up on Amazon, they sell a whole variety of them. And it plays because it generates an electromagnetic field that interacts with other electromagnetic fields,
Okay.
especially us. I mean, you play the instrument by moving your hand around the antenna, and it creates these really crazy tones. The fact that they're selling it for so much money when the theremin kit is probably between 20 and 30 bucks suggests that the housing of the thing, which does have lights on it, so it's reacting to the sound, that's probably more expensive for them to produce than it is the theremin itself. So that doesn't mean you can't use a theremin, because it's really interesting if you keep it away from things. We've actually had some really interesting results sometimes with a theremin and other equipment going off at the same time when they're not connected. So, for example, recently I was down at the Whaley House Museum in San Diego. Didn't have a lot happening. Had a medium with me, another friend, and the medium actually had bought a cheap theremin kit, and we put it together right before we went over there. She also had some static electricity detectors, some electrostatic detectors that would light up based on the surge of electrostatic field. And nothing happened for almost 3.5 hours throughout the house. It's all of a sudden the theremin kit, the theremin itself, which we were in the music room, it was sitting right next to the piano, which was interesting. And then the two electrostatic detectors, which were probably about 4 feet and then another few feet away. In kind of a wave, the theremin goes off, and so did the electrostatic detectors. And she was picking up a presence at the time as a medium. So we have two diverse pieces of equipment reacting and a human being having an experience, and that's much better than that. It'd be great if we can get a ghost to learn to play the theremin. That's a whole different story. But I would actually almost suggest, if you're going to spend $100, buy a theremin. Don't buy a REM pod, because you will hear it, and then on the other side of it, you can play it yourself at home, so you can learn to play it. So it has a dual purpose in that way. I mean, that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
The SLS cameras are highly suspect, partly because of all the stuff that's been on the internet about the Kinect system that the Xbox has used. There's a lot of false, a lot of bad stuff from there. And we don't know what algorithms are programmed into that tablet that might actually, juice the system a little bit. So that's the thing, is that when you're using scientific equipment, you need to know how it works. If you're using something that randomizes anything, we have random number generator, random event generators we might use. We have to check them every so often for randomness, because they're not consistently random. They sometimes go out of randomness, and they have to be
I saw that experiment. It was years ago when I was a kid, where they had the computer and it was supposed to generate random numbers, and they had people on each side of it thinking, other numbers, and it definitely, they proved that it didn't generate random numbers as you said. And it must have, they try to attribute it to the humans. And the other thing you said about EMF, like how people take the meter and they think that they're reading EMF and it's a ghost. What was the discrepancy you said about that? What's the thing that people get wrong about that?
Well, first of all, there's two different types of, there's many types of EMF sensors, but typically when you buy an EMF meter, whether it's a K2 meter or a tri-field or something else, they are set to pick up electromagnetic fields from technology, from the electrical system. I've found more bad wiring in old buildings using an EMF meter than I've ever found anything paranormal. So they were not designed to pick up anything paranormal. We started using them, actually forms of EMF sensors were used as, electronic ones were used as far back as the 60s in parapsychology, and earlier with a compass, just a simple compass. And so that type of EMF sensor, we're looking to see if there's any change in the environment or a difference in the environment between when somebody says there's a ghost present and when there's not. That's important. But first, you need to check and see what are the sources of EMF in the room, in the building. The very first time I used one in a haunting case, a residual haunting case, which was a legitimate case, we did find that the spots that the people experienced something, there were higher readings, even when we turned the power off in the house. So that's important. But when I started using it, I was down the hall from a couple of the folks I had with me, a couple of students I had from our parapsychology program, were in the kitchen with the woman who was renting the place. And I hear a click from the kitchen and the thing spikes. It turned out that I was probably 30 or 40 feet away from the coffee maker, and they had just turned that on and then set on a spike. So then there are the natural meters, the natural EMF meters, which don't pick up, don't think of it as picking up radiation. It picks up the ocean of EMF the natural fields that we're in, because there's electromagnetic field all around us. That's natural, not from technology. Okay. So the idea of that one is if there's a change, you have to keep them steady. They can only sit either motionless in your hand or on a table or something, because if you move it around, you are causing a shift in the electromagnetic field, almost as if you're moving your hand through water. Okay. You're creating a wave. So that's going to create a false reading. On the other hand, if you put it down, living humans do give off electromagnetic fields, and it changes coming from us. So when I use the natural meter, I have it down. I make sure that I move my hand back and forth over it. I want to see if I'm going to affect it. I have anybody else who's with me do the same thing. One of my colleagues years ago when we were doing work together, if she got within 4 feet of the thing, it went off. So she was definitely generating a lot of big feel. So those are things you have to watch out for. And in the actual apparition cases, the ghost cases, we haven't found that there's really a connection other than it seems that the apparition is kind of moving through the ocean of electromagnetic field and creating a wave, which you pick up kind of as the wake of the boat. You don't pick up the apparition, you pick up what the apparition did in the environment.
Okay.
And from that, coupled with a human experience, we can come to some conclusion that there really is an apparition there.
So that rule you gave on the apparition last time, I was trying to remember when you said that if you see it from the camera, you said something about it's more likely that the equipment malfunction or surge electricity, or is it the ghost? What was that rule you had said about it?
Well, basically, apparition, any of this phenomenon, apparitions or residual hauntings, those things are not physical in the sense that they don't reflect or give off light, nor do they make acoustical sound. There's no sound waves. That's why you can have a situation where, 5 people in the room and only one person sees the apparition. Maybe another person hears the apparition, and a third person might smell the perfume or cologne or body odor of that same apparition, because we all pick up the signal, but we process it differently. We're not all the same. So that's one thing. That means that if you try to take a picture of what you're seeing or of a ghost, there is nothing to reflect light. There is nothing it's not giving off light because it's not a visual thing. And so the camera can't pick that up. However, apparitions, being human, conceivably could affect things. They could affect a ghost box. They could affect a recorder. They could affect a camera if they intentionally want to do it. So it's mind over matter. It's psychokinesis. It's all that. But again, you need some indication there actually was a ghost there. I've known people who've gone to places that I knew for a fact nobody had an experience for years. And now they're talking about the EVPs that they're getting. And so either they're creating it themselves or they have some tag-alongs. There's some spirits that decided to screw it with them.
Yeah, and so it's so funny, Lloyd. Like, there's so many places to investigate, brand new places that nobody's ever even gone to. But let's say a TV show ghost hunting group, they go to a location, then all of a sudden it's swarming with these wannabe ghost hunters. It's crazy. It's like find your own place,
Yeah, the thing is, for some historical places, it's been a lifesaver because they've been able to, the reason they charge is because they were, not doing well as a nonprofit. There have been museums and historical locations that have literally been able to fix themselves up, open to the public because of paranormal tourism is what it really is. However, the one thing that John Sabol, who's been kind of a stalwart of some of the ghost conferences for years, he's got a background in archaeology. Not too long ago, he brought up something in a paper I read where, the idea of residual hauntings is that living people leave impressions behind.
Okay.
And then other people pick them up down the road, right? Well, it's likely that ghost hunters are leaving impressions behind, and that means that someday some group is going to walk into a location and see a ghost hunter who left an impression behind. They may actually see an imprint, a haunting of a ghost hunting group.
Yeah.
And if there actually was an imprint behind, they could be recording over it.
Wow.
Which
That's just like this. And I think I mentioned this before, but and I call it living ghosts. Tell me if I told this story before. If I did, I'll move on to something else. But in 1974 in Chicago, Illinois, this couple, they moved into this house, and around about 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, they would see this man manifest and walk over to the couch, and then there's a woman, a ghostly woman, and he's slapping her. And they saw this a few times, and they said, okay, our place is haunted. So they went to a block party, and the host goes, yeah, we do this every year. And the lady's flipping through the photo album, looking at the pictures, and then all of a sudden she sees this one picture, and she goes, oh my God, those are the ghosts in my house. And the host looks at her and goes, ghosts? And he goes, I know where you live at. He goes, look, when that couple lived in your house, they got into domestic arguments and fights and everything else. The police were there all the time. They got a divorce. He lives 5 blocks down the road, and she lives out of state. They're both very much alive. And that's the situation is they left this negative imprint into the atmosphere that replays itself over and over and over again.
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest misconceptions about hauntings is that they only relate to dead people.
Yeah.
And, the reality is that that's like saying that all movies, even the ones made in the silent era, even the ones I watched last night, they were all dead people. But we know that they were alive when they made the movie, right?
Right.
So it's just a recording, and I've had, Kate, one of my earliest cases was a couple that was being woken up in the middle of the night by the sounds of two people making love loudly in the next room. And it turned out to connect directly to the previous owners, who were still fairly young, who had left this impression behind at a particular time of the morning almost every night. And it is that the living that leave the impressions behind in the environment. We're not sure what the mechanism is in the environment. We think it may have something to do with the Earth's magnetic field on a very local level, because that's been connected to psychic ability in some respects. We, human beings who are alive, are psychic enough to pick some of that stuff up. So we pick up the imprints behind. One of the things you can tell people is that almost everybody who's gone house hunting has experienced a haunting, because they've walked into a place and got a vibe.
Yeah.
The vibe is
yeah.
The vibe is the emotion. Yeah.
Loyd, have you ever investigated Old Sacramento?
I've been to Old Sac a bunch of times, but I've not actually done. I didn't even know where specifically to look into.
Okay, they have a place called Evangeline's. It's a
I know it, man. Yeah, I know. I heard that Evangeline's was haunted. I love that place. I haven't been there all since COVID, but
we did an investigation there. Supposedly, there's this miner that haunts the basement, but also too on the 3rd floor.
Yeah, 3rd floor is what I heard. Yeah.
There's this haunting, and people who work there late at night and prepare for the next day, they hear shuffling of feet. Sometimes they hear disco music. They hear people laughing. And here you got positive energy, because on the 3rd floor, back in the 70s, it was D.O. Mills. It was a nightclub. And there you go. It doesn't have to be negative. It could be very much positive. And here you got these people laughing and dancing and doing all that. And that could be me up there, because I was out there during the disco days.
Yeah, it's really, I think, again, that's another problem. People seem to think that all this stuff is negative, even the residual stuff, but it's often very, very positive. And, happy memories also stick around.
Yeah.
But the thing is that people usually only react to negative stuff or tell people about negative stuff most of the time. It's kind of like the news, you know. That's why it's so negative. It's pretty rare. It's really rare for somebody to call me up. It's happened a few times, but it's rare for somebody to call me and say, "Hey, we got this ghost in our house. He's really cool. You want to come over and meet him?" I mean, it's rare.
I know. I mean, well, Loyd, let me ask you this. Two things. As far as scariness, the Dybbuk, I want to talk about the Dybbuk, what you think of that is about, and then what you said about, like, say when you watch like the Tin Man. I was watching the Thin Man with Adam Clayton Powell, whatever.
William Powell.
It's like the 1930s movie. I just started watching them, and the thing that strikes me is those people are so alive in these pictures, and you wish you could connect to them, and they just seem like they're there. And you just hope that one day, and I'm wondering what you think about this, will we ever be able to connect to so much that's alive in this capture, but the only thing that's gone is the soul and the breathing part? Like, it just seems like they're so closely connected. What do you think we'll ever come up with anything where we could bridge that gap? I don't know.
Well, in some respects, mediums do bridge the gap. Or can speak to people from the other side if those people are willing to chat with us, to talk to us. I mean, I would love to talk to William Powell and Myrna Loy. The Thin Man movies are amongst my favorite films.
Some of my man, I could watch all the time.
I've watched them probably more than I've watched Star Wars, which is hard to say.
Hey, now you might have me there. I mean, I watched them because I just happened to one day just throw it on, and it was just so much going on. It was so funny, everything. It's like, man, and you get hooked,
Yeah. It's the two of them together were just an amazing. I mean, they set the bar really, really high. And I was just reading, actually, coincidentally, I just read something, a post on Facebook today, talking about William Powell and how they first shot the movie and didn't tell him they were shooting. They told him just simply to practice his lines. He was nervous. So they had the film rolling and perfect take with some of his ad-libs and quips.
Wow, I never heard that.
And then they did the same thing with Myrna Loy. So, and the two of them together were just, William Powell remarked, it wasn't like acting. We just clicked. I mean, the two of them just clicked so well in that respect. But, it's a good example of people who are no longer with us. I mean, Myrna Loy died a few years ago. She was around for a really long time, but people who are no longer with us, we can watch that stuff and it still has power in some respects. It has the power, power of a good story is something that human beings react to no matter what. And I don't remember what the first part of that was.
The Dybbuk.
The Dybbuk. All right. Well, first, if you're referring to the Dybbuk box, that's
what do you think of those things? Yeah,
that's a hoax. It's completely made up. Completely. Okay. Secondly, a Dybbuk is a Jewish spirit. It's basically in Jewish mythology, and generally, it's a spirit of someone who had a problem in life. They might have been very, very neurotic. Not unusual for Jewish people. Might have been an alcoholic. It's someone who had a problem when they died. Could have been a bad person too. And what they do is they seek out someone who is similar to them, so that they kind of think of it as spirit attachment. That's what, not possession per se, but spirit attachment. And spirit attachment seems to be a fairly real thing in some instances. Where somebody who's an alcoholic who's dead and still sticking around finds another alcoholic, a live alcoholic, and by connecting to that alcoholic, they're experiencing what the alcoholic is experiencing. It's kind of like continuing the addiction. The problem is it creates a codependency, and it amplifies the alcoholism in that person, or the drug addiction, or the neurosis, or the anger, or something else.
So you as a hard researcher, and that's the other thing from the last show I took. What is Loyd compelled by, knowing all the stuff that all the BS that he's waded through? Like, what compels you? So those are some things. So you actually feel there's some traction to that, huh?
There's some traction to that. I wouldn't call them Dybbuks. I know that that's kind of what the Dybbuk definition is, but I don't know all the time. I
I
do
mean the
know
attachment part.
Yeah, I mean, the attachment part, I do know in some instances that seems to be what's going on.
Okay.
Sometimes there have been psychics or mediums who have tried to kind of unattach. Interestingly enough, that the most successful way to deal with that is hypnosis. There's actually a form of hypnosis called spirit releasement therapy, which is actually taught online now by my friend's hypnotherapy training institute. And even if there wasn't a spirit attached, if the person just thought there was, the technique works wonders. It's just really a really useful tool in general. So the idea is they hypnotize the person to talk to the spirit and work through their issues and kind of get them to move on in that circumstance. So again, there are a lot of times we don't know when we're helping people whether there really is something there or not, because a lot of it is just there's no other evidence other than, let's say, one person having an experience. So we have kind of an ethical mandate in parapsychology to help people who ask for help. That's what we're trying to do. And that's more important than doing actual research in an investigation.
Loyd, what do you think about some of these ghost hunting TV shows?
Not much.
They don't want to have you on there to debunk them, huh?
Well, I'm bored by them and I'm annoyed by them.
So am I.
There's just so many things that, backing up a little bit, I grew up in the TV industry. My dad was with NBC from before my birth through about 1980, and then he had his own company doing sports production. And I spent a lot of time behind the scenes. I spent a lot of time growing up at 30 Rockefeller Plaza, where my dad's office was. My uncle Larry was a TV soap opera director. And then also I had another uncle on my mother's side who was a radio newscaster. And both of my brothers are in the entertainment industry. One works for the Today Show as a stage manager, and the other one is just retiring from his company. He owned a company for a long time that made movie trailers, and the company still exists to do that. So I've been around TV myself, doing stuff since the early 80s. It's knowing all that and watching those shows initially, and then talking to producers who wanted to start a show with me and seeing the process and the reason it failed. A lot of reasons why it failed, usually network executives. But the whole idea of most of these shows is to get ratings, to still to sell a product, if they have commercials, but it's to get ratings. To get fewer eyes on it. And that means drama. And that means, spooky stuff, because ghosts are spooky stuff. So the whole idea of being in the dark right off the bat comes from television. It doesn't come from any sort of research end at all. And there's a lot of, and the equipment piece. Back in the 1980s, I did a lot of segments for different TV shows, like news shows and Hour Magazine and a whole bunch of evening magazine, things like that. And they always wanted to do it at night. And they always wanted to turn the lights down low because most of the time it was during the month of October, spooky for Halloween. And inevitably, several directors or the field directors or producers would say, "Can we turn the lights down further? Can we turn them off? That's spookier." And of course, the camera guy would say, "Yeah, but if I don't have the light on the camera, at least they won't see anything." This is all before Night Shot, right? The other thing was they were always asking, since Ghostbusters, they were asking, "Do you have anything that makes noise and has lights?" Equipment. So it was, and sometimes I dragged out a toy tricorder because inevitably the director who asked that question didn't know what that was. The camera guy always knew what it was and would always play along, whoever it was. So when Night Shot came in commercially in the 90s, that allowed these shows to do things in the dark to make it spooky. And let's face it, Night Shot with the eyes shining looks pretty spooky. Development, people started using equipment that had lights and noises on it. That's why a lot of this stuff does that. So it was really all for television. Then there's the editing. The producers and sometimes the network executives have a very specific idea of what the show should say and whether it should promote, evil or go for scary, all of that.
Wow. Wow.
It's I've had so many discussions with producers who had good ideas and wanted to do the real thing. Even sometimes at the request of one of the cable networks or even a streaming service, only to find out that as we did the final proposal, and sometimes more than that, the network or whoever the executives were, we've changed our mind. We don't want to do anything different than Ghost Hunters because we know that Ghost Hunters gets ratings. So forget you guys.
That's crazy.
And like Zandine and myself, we've done a lot of paranormal investigations. And on these paranormal investigations, some of them, you sit around and you do this and you do that and try to get some kind of evidence, and you don't get nothing.
Right.
And that's how the TV show should actually be, because a lot of times it's just super boring. You don't get nothing, no EVPs, nothing, no anomalies in your photographs, nothing.
But that gets no ratings. So the whole idea of any of the things I've done, even back to sightings. I worked a lot with sightings, and there were a couple of things that we did for the cases that I did and Carrie Gaynor did. We actually worked with the original producers to find cases, work with their publicity folks to find cases. And we first had pre-interviews with the people to make sure of two things. Number one, the case sounded like it might be legitimate. And number two, the people could tell a good story. So you wanted witnesses who not only were having potentially real paranormal experiences, but they could talk about them and that they would be good on camera. And that's not always, so I know that that's one reason why some of these shows haven't had witnesses, because the witnesses either are sometimes crazy for some of the cases they go to, but they may not be a good interview subject for television. It's not hard to find those cases, honestly, as long as you really know what you're doing. It's just that the network folks, the folks who are running these, the producers don't know anything about the subject at all. They know what visually can capture things. They know that what emotionally can capture things. They want drama. They want emotion. They want the ghost hunters to run screaming from the place, because that's television.
And so people, that reminds me of I just want to chime in what you wanted to keep going. That reminds me of a story I read about Bruce Lee. And they said, Bruce Lee, give us your best kick, man. And he did it so fast. And they're like, and he's like, did you catch that? And they're like, oh no, man, you gotta slow that down. He's like, slow it down. He's like, man, you want a real kick? And they're like, dude, the audience would never see that. That doesn't look good to us, like what you said. So, and he was miffed. He was like, well, don't you want the best kick?
Right.
So,
yeah, no, I know that story. Yeah, I do know about that. And of course, later on, 10 years later, we had the $6 Million Man, where they slowed down Lee Majors.
So,
They could have done that for the green. They really could have done that.
Well, that's funny. When we talk about speed like that, I love zombie movies, but like I don't like slow zombies. I like the kind of zombies like if you're 60 years old, like me or whatever, and maybe you're out of shape or whatever, but you still got to run like heck because something's gonna happen if you don't run. I like when the speed is good. But I saw one series that changed my mind about how people can play with it, and that series is called From. That series From, the zombies or monsters or whatever they are, they actually are pretty smart, and they let you know they could get you at a moment's notice, but they walk to you really slow, and they kind of taunt you a little bit. So even though they're walking slow, the threat of them being able to go real fast, it kind of did it for me. But like you said, people go for sensationalism and however the brain can, catch it. And that's another thing, like what they're doing, the same thing with television, they're doing with songwriting now. They're saying that they just are too dumb. So you need songs of 40 words or less, no nerding out. We want staccato where, you can play 2 fingers on the piano and they can go along. I mean, people want that, so.
Hey, Sandy, I've seen From, and one thing about From, when I first watched it, it was an old lady and she's outside the window, and she goes,
Yeah.
"Can I please come in? It's so cold out here." And the little girl opens up the window.
Oh God. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, so
well,
good.
And
yeah, and it's just I just think back to, you mentioned the speed. Remember the old Mummy movies that Universal made, and the mummy is like limping along really slow, and the woman is like running from him and trips and falls and turns and looks and screams, and then somehow the mummy catches up to her. But
Loyd, I bet you're gonna watch Wolfman.
I don't know, because a friend of mine just posted a really meh review of it.
He's
Uh,
right.
yeah, yeah, he wasn't
It's
he not
You didn't
impressed.
like it?
He didn't like.
it,
He said it was basically. He said it was not good enough to want to really go watch it again. It was not
Wow.
bad enough to make fun of.
I
well,
need to read. I need to read the reviews. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
tell you what.
I trust this friend of mine. I trust his opinion on
Yeah.
things.
Okay.
No,
Yeah.
Lloyd, I tell you what. I tell you what. Me and my son, we went to go see it, but we got the times wrong. So we walked into the theater after 30 minutes had gone. So we're like, okay, we're watching it, and we read what had happened before that. Well, I won't spoil it anyway. We read part of that happened before, and we watched the rest. And after it was over, we was like, do we want to watch the first half? And it's like, so we just want to get our money's worth. So we did. We watched the beginning, but like it was a really short movie, and there wasn't much to it other than, just trying to. I don't want to ruin it for you, but
No,
it's
that's
not
right.
a direct. Yeah,
I
it's not
might
like
watch it when it's. I might watch it when it streams for free. Let's put it that way. I'm certainly not
you
going to
can
go.
stream it for free right now, Cody. You can go to Cody, configure it in like 5 minutes, and boom, you have it. But I wouldn't say to see it at least if you want to see the transformation. But I mean, it's like people that weren't scared, they didn't get scared. It's not like when you're a little kid. You got Lon
Right.
Chaney, Boris Karloff.
I
You know,
I I
yeah,
started watching. I started watching those movies when I was about 4 or 5 years old, and they never scared me. I thought they were. I mean, I've got them all here on DVD. I've got all the old Universal movies with me, um, and I watch them every once in a while. Uh, they were not scary. I am looking forward to Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein. That looks really
Oh
interesting.
yeah.
Okay. I haven't
And
seen the trailer. I haven't seen it.
yeah, yeah. I think that's gonna be a really good film. Uh, as long as it doesn't get too away from the story, because it really should stick. No, there haven't been really great adaptations of that. But we're going to continue to see versions of
Yeah.
werewolf movies. I think the best werewolf movie I've seen was An American Werewolf in London.
Oh yeah, that was a
Yeah,
good
that's
one.
still hard to top.
That
Yeah.
was good.
It really is hard to top, actually, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was top notch. What are some of your favorite movies, Lloyd?
Well, The Thin Man is one.
Okay, Thin Man.
I love Army of Darkness.
Okay, Army of Darkness.
Ash.
I'm a big
Is that the one? Is that the one? The older one where the guy, it was the witch, and she said, "Didn't you used to like me? What happened?" He goes, "Well, you just got real ugly." And
yeah.
yeah. That
was
was my favorite line in there because she was like, "Yeah, you love me and everything."
Right,
and he goes,
right.
"What?"
Yeah, I mean, I think that was that line might have actually appeared in Evil Dead 1 and 2 also, but
Okay,
this was the one. This was the one where Ash goes time traveling.
Okay.
Yeah, that movie was just. It's. I mean, it's a horror comedy, but it's really, really. I think it's just really a great film.
Good.
But one of my favorite films is Galaxy Quest, which is to me still the best Star Trek movie ever made. But
Wow.
that's an amazing movie. I do love the original Star Wars trilogy as well.
Okay. Yeah.
It's I'm a fan of certain old movies, also like The Maltese Falcon and The Big Sleep, some of the old detective films.
Maltese
As
Falcon.
well. So I have a wide range of likes and dislikes.
Do you like crossovers?
Such
Where
as
one character from, let's say, from a comic book, from a movie, meets another character from
sure.
movie or a comic book.
Yeah, like Hulk versus
Jason
Superman,
versus Freddy.
Yeah. I mean, I did enjoy, a lot of the old Frankenstein, Wolfman, and Dracula movies because they cross over quite a bit.
Yeah.
Well, of course, the ultimate crossover was Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein. That was the best one.
Oh yeah, I love that. Oh my god, yeah.
Yeah,
Oh my God.
yeah. And one of my in fact, one of my favorite ghost movies is a movie called The Time of Their Lives with Abbott and Costello not doing their usual stuff. Costello plays a ghost from the Revolutionary War. Abbott plays initially a butler in the Revolutionary era, and then he plays a psychiatrist in modern times who encounters the ghost. So it's a really good film.
Did you know there's a comic book out there that deals with the Evil Dead and Ash, and they
Oh
have
yeah.
Ash crossing over with all these different characters.
Yes. Yeah. I have been reading them. I have been reading them. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, okay, yeah. Like
But
he's
but
got the
Lloyd,
Marvel zombies and everything.
Lloyd, do you think that there'll ever be like when Star Wars first came out? My dad took me. You got I got like the book with C-3PO, Mr. Daniels, and who's inside the costumes. You know how they made them, and all that stuff. I haven't seen a movie that kind of they tried to like equal that. And I want to ask you about that Mandela effect. When I saw C-3PO, he always had all gold the whole movie. None of this silver leg crap that they got now in the movie. That definitely changed. But my son seemed to remember C-3PO having that silver leg all the time. What do you think of that?
He was definitely gold in the original movie. I
It
have
was
the
gold, right? Yeah, he was gold the whole
but,
time.
but in later films and other films, he had to have the leg replaced at some point. So he's not consistent through all the movies. That's not unusual in some
Right,
respects.
but you know what I mean? They tried to have what the original version he had that silver leg like that always was. And
Yeah,
I'm
well,
like,
when George Lucas released Star Wars on VHS originally, the space scenes there was even somebody from ILM put a sneaker in as one of the spaceships. And I mean, I still have a copy of the original VHS. When he re-released it after
okay.
redoing some of the special effects, and that was removed. So people do remember stuff. The original release on DVD of Star Trek was redone with new special effects for television, and then they re-released it on DVD and Blu-ray, so it doesn't look the same. So people will falsely remember something, seemingly falsely remember something, but they're not falsely remembering it. And I will also tell you that sometimes what people remember about movies comes from the trailer, not from the actual film.
Good point.
My brother, who has been editing movie trailers for, I don't know, 40 years, sometimes his company would get a rough cut of the film well before the edit. Sometimes even the special effects are missing. They would be told sometimes either what to put in the trailer, approximate idea, some ideas, or they come up with it themselves. So if you've ever wondered why some trailers have scenes that you don't see in the final movie, it's because the folks cutting the trailer months before the movie was finished editing had scenes that were not in the movie. And they thought they were more impressive and important. So I do know, I mean, I've talked to people and they remember something from something, and I do know that the trailer was different because my brother was working on it, for example.
Wow.
So I mean, there are little things like that that pop up when we're thinking about events we've seen on television. Things get edited again on television multiple times, sometimes for different markets, actually, which is really interesting. There can be a slightly different edit on an episode of some show or a movie for England or for the Chinese market. And if you happen to see that pieces of that, it'll cause kind of a conflict in what you've seen originally on the screen yourself.
Yeah.
And we see extended versions now being released all the time, right? So in fact, I understand that the people are not happy about the fact that the extended version of Nosferatu only has 4 extra minutes. It's like, that's not really extended.
Yeah.
I was reading that in the news today. So there's going to be different stuff that people remember. And we kind of label a lot of the stuff the Mandela effect. There are things
we do, huh?
Yeah, and there are things that we just misremember. You know, our memories are not perfect. But when somebody says, wait a minute, I remember C-3PO having a silver leg. And if you've ever seen a Star Wars movie or a photo of C-3PO with silver leg, that's going to suddenly go, yeah, you're right. That's not right. You know, it causes, we don't have perfect memories. Let's put it that way.
Right, right, right.
And I just want to mention this a little bit off the trail, but there was a Star Trek movie in where a ship was exploding, and in the debris, one of the film editors stuck R2D2 into the
Oh yeah, I
film.
remember hearing about that. Yeah.
Yeah, that was amazing. So so Star Trek and uh, oh, Star Trek and Star Wars sort of did a crossover with that.
Well, and I was just reading an article about George Lucas talking about having really watched the original Star Trek series. And Star Trek, without Star Trek, he would not have probably come up with Star Wars. That it
Wow.
inspired
Wow.
him for that. And then, of course, Star Wars and brought up the Star Trek the motion picture. So it was this
Yeah.
kind of incestuous kind of thing at that point as
Well,
well.
didn't George Lucas also too try to make a movie about Buck Rogers and he couldn't do it, and so therefore he came up
I,
with
yeah,
Star.
I don't know. I don't know if it was Buck Rogers. Probably it was Buck Rogers rather than Flash Gordon because I think that had already been made.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean that was, and actually the original script of Star Wars is different. The first draft, and Dark Horse Comics, you know, made a graphic novel from the original script with the original characters. So there was no Luke Skywalker. There was a Starkiller. Actually, was the character's was a character's
Dark
name.
Killer. Wow.
Yeah, so it's
What?
quite a bit different. But by the time the movie was made, the novel came out about 3 months before Star Wars did. It was labeled as George Lucas as the author. I'm pretty sure I bought the novel and read it right away. I'm pretty sure that it was ghostwritten by somebody. The novel
Ah.
was was definitely from the shooting script. It was definitely from the final script. So, because I actually remember thinking that if they can make this movie like this book, it's going to be amazing. And I was very fortunate. The force was with me. I won I won tickets by calling a radio station a week before it opened. I won tickets to a press screening 3 days before it opened officially,
Oh
and
wow.
saw that with a lot of people in Chicago and in the press. And then the next day, a good friend of mine whose father worked for the Chicago Sun-Times said, "Hey, my dad got these tickets to see this movie. He doesn't want to go. Do you want to go with me?" And I said, "What movie?" He said, "Star Wars. You know anything about it?" I said, "Yeah, I saw it last night. Let's go."
Let's go.
So I actually saw
Yeah.
two previews
Man,
before it opened.
that's crazy. When it before everybody knew. And if we could only get George Lucas and Ryan Reynolds to do Green Lantern, we might be funny. But I wanted to ask you, what like for you having all this experience, what's a paranormal place or experience where it just really like yeah that really hit me like I there's no denying because a lot of times we delude ourselves and we think we see something, but then say like a person like yourself that has researched that and you can say no, it's not that, it's not this. What has really compelled, what has really been compelling to you where you said damn, that's really there's something here.
Well, for feeling the imprints, the residual stuff, there are plenty of places I've been. I mean, even Alcatraz has a significant negative vibe to it, and
Okay.
certain spots, one of the solitary cells feels really, really bad. The thing that felt worse was the medical area where the Birdman of Alcatraz, who was psychotic, was held. That felt
Okay.
bizarrely bad. And I was with a psychic at the time too, and she was picking stuff up there. So that, I mean, that was, but there have been other places like that that I've been to. Um, I'd say that, the USS Hornet gave me a really good feel, and I got a good feeling from the phenomena that was happening and talking to the witnesses, but also kind of some minimal interaction I kind of feel was a genuine thing as well.
Okay.
I will say that the Bantha Inn my first visit to the Bantha Inn out there in Tracy was during the day, and we were shooting something for Hard Copy, which was a TV news show. A friend of mine.
Hard Copy. I remember Hard Copy.
I remember.
Yeah. So I was there like before opening, and the bartender and the owner were down at one end of the bar. We've already talked to them at some point, and they're telling me about all this physical stuff that's going on at the Bantha Inn. And the director and the camera guy have their back to the bar, and they're facing me, and they're interviewing me. And all of a sudden, this glass ashtray on the bar picks up in the air about 3 feet, flips over, and smacks down on the bar without breaking. And they heard it. The bartender and owner were laughing. I had to start laughing. I thought that was really funny, especially when the director said, "What was that?" And then, of course, they said, "Can he get him to do it again?" We actually had
again, the camera. Yeah, I got to go there.
The camera was not turned in the right direction, but a glass of orange juice slid across the bar at that point. I felt like, in some respects, I felt like that place was like an Abbott and Costello movie, just because of the fun stuff that the ghost was doing.
Wow. We gotta check that out, Paul. The Bantha Inn in Tracy. Let's go, man.
Yeah, I'm not sure how active it's been. It hasn't been that active over the last few years, but again, ghosts do not
stick.
Zandy, some of our investigators have done it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And we also too did the USS Hornet, and
it depends on what's happening at the time, huh? I guess what crowd is there? Anything could happen. It depends, huh?
Yeah.
A really good place to investigate, and a lot of people don't do it, is the Moaning Caverns. People used to walk along the ground and fall into a hole that was as the size of the Statue of Liberty and die. They even found saber-toothed bones of a saber-toothed tiger in the Moaning Caverns. Yeah.
Huh. Yeah, I've not heard of any imprints of people from the Stone Age sticking around that.
Yeah. Well, that's a trip. They talked about. We talked about on the show how, the residuals are usually like what the place was, or the easement. Like if it was, barber shop, or if it was a brothel. Right. One guy was even talking about, San Francisco has, a lot of lawyers and a lot of architects, whatever. But I don't know what that sounds like. But yeah, so I wonder if, how true it is the residual was an effect of whatever was going on there.
There seems to be, probably a couple of factors. One is the environment itself, the right conditions to either record. For all we know, the environment could be recording everything, which is kind of scary when you think about it. But I guess you could say that certain moments in time are either more emotionally imprinted or the conditions are right. That's what gets replayed to us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Especially high emotion, things that are high emotion do.
Hey, Loyd, I remember you want me to keep this 1 hour. We are up to the hour.
1 hour.
Yep.
And it's been a good hour.
Thank you.
Yeah. Loyd, what's the best way that people can get a hold of you?
Well, now that my website's up, it's probably through the website. So it's just www.loydauerbach.com. Just remember to spell the name right, otherwise you'll never get it. Although Google might actually suggest it to you. There's a lot of stuff there. When you get me the link to this particular interview, I'll make sure it's up there on the media page. But there's quite a bit of information. I just started a blog. I'll be doing some things some articles every so often. But there's a contact page and an email. So there's an email listed. You can get to me. Folks can also find me pretty much every other Sunday with my YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/@AskProfessorParanormal. I do a live Q&A at 5:30 p.m. Pacific. The next one I have coming up is going to be on February 2nd. That'll be the next time that's coming. So 2 weeks after that, and so on.
Remember that.
And also find me, you can find me if you just look for Prof Paranormal, PROF Paranormal on Blue Sky, Threads, Twitter. I'm there for that.
And how can people buy your books? Where can they find your books?
My books are available on Amazon and actually should be on barnesandnoble.com as well. But that's where you'll find them. Amazon is the easiest place to find them.
We should have a
Fantastic.
way. We should have a way to call him in mid-show if we ever have like a discrepancy or something to call him. Because there's been a couple of times, people have had the ideas about equipment or whatever it was. But that would be nice if we could
Yeah.
talk to Phil.
Well, I'll be happy to give you my phone number off interview here.
Yeah.
But I will be teaching, like I start teaching new classes the first week of February for the Ryan Education Center. So I'm teaching a course coming up, which people can join even into the first or second week of February. But it's a course on investigations. It's got a basic investigations course of apparitions, hauntings, and poltergeists. That's an 8-week online course. I'm co-teaching a course with a skeptic named Kenny Biddle called The Skeptical Approach to Parapsychology. And then in March, I'm teaching a 4-week class, which is right up your alley, Zandine, which is looking at paranormal tech.
Okay. That's in March.
Yeah, that's in March.
My birthday's in March too. That's perfect.
Yeah, so the link to the Ryan Education Center is on my website, or it's just just go to rhine.org and click on education.
Yeah, thanks.
Well, thank you so much, Loyd. It was a pleasure interviewing you again. You always have a lot of information. We love it. Thank you for being on.
Well, thank you, Paul. Thank you, Zandine. Good to see you guys.
Thank you, man. Excellent.
All right. Good night now.
Good night.
Hey, Loyd.